Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope your Wednesday's off to a great start. Thanks for kicking it with the boys and me until 1 o'clock, 615-737-1045. That's Bert and Lucas back there making it happen. Your phone calls at any point throughout the course of today. Wednesday, we got the dumbest thing in sports this week, so make sure you've got your nominees for 11 o'clock. And, of course, we've got a ton of stuff to talk about from Titans OTAs yesterday. Was out there after the radio show, wrapped up, saw a lot of practice, talked to the players after the fact. And, of course, we heard from the coordinators yesterday in the 11 o'clock hour, so learned a lot there as well. But I think, what are the main headlines to come out of this thing yesterday? Because, obviously, on the field, Monday, Tuesday, off today, back out there on Thursday, only one of these 3 days open to media. So this is, you'll see more team-produced highlights, I'm sure, and things like the sled drill stuff. But beyond that, we're only out there 1 day a week. So there's only so much you can really glean. I can't tell you how much better Malik Willis and Will Levis looked from day 1 to day 2, but I can tell you what day 2 looked like. Kevin Byard and Christian Fulton, Harold Landry, not present for OTAs. It's voluntary, so, nothing to sweat about there. But obviously at some point I think people would be calmed a little bit by hearing from Kevin Byard, wouldn't you think? With all the things that have been swirling around him this offseason. And then, Christian Fulton not being there. You can't get upset with him about it. But I think it's fair if I said that I was disappointed that Christian Fulton wasn't out there yesterday. Is that unfair of me? Because I've got high expectations for that dude. He's a good player. He needs to work on his durability, and that's something that Mike Vrabel cited before, and something, by the way, that he's working to that effect. He's working in South Florida with a trainer. Teron Davenport tweeted the details specifically. I can't remember the name of the trainer off the top of my head, but basically somebody whose workouts are designed to help that durability issue that he's had in the last couple of years. I would have liked to see him out there. It's not the worst thing in the world that he wasn't. And then beyond that, Jeff Simmons saying that he's still not totally healthy. That's like a 4-month span that ankle situation has continued to bother him, and he sounds like he's had a pretty grueling rehab process. Coming off the big contract, or coming off an offseason where he's gotten the big contract, he's present, he's available, he's out there doing what he can. And, he's able to do plenty at this time of year. It's not like he's still visibly limited or being held out of practice at this point because of that ankle situation. But I thought it was noteworthy to hear Jeff say that he wasn't 100% still as of yesterday. And then what we're seeing right now from the Titans on the field is trying to observe what things look like in the offense. There's only so much we can report on. I saw some promising stuff from the rookies yesterday, specifically Tajay Spears, not just as a running back, but as a receiver. Again, offensive line, defensive line play, you can't really get a good measure on it right now. And they're not doing tackling. They're just out there in helmets, shirts, and shorts. It's a pretty casual affair, or I get casual is not the right word for it. There is still a sense of urgency. That's obviously something that the coaches want, urgency, energy at these practices, but they're not going full speed. So there's only so much you can learn. Now, I think of all the different things that are actually noteworthy, the fact that I think we pretty much know who the starting offensive line is going to be heading into training camp. And you might have said we knew that already, but this is just reaffirming that now that we've seen it for multiple weeks and now that the veterans are mixing in with the rookies. And the fact that somebody like Elijah Molden, in the absence of Kevin Byard, is being tried in a position that he's familiar with, but one that he hasn't played since becoming a pro. They were working him at safety yesterday. And, I know we've talked about the Dane Cruikshank role and who was going to fill that void last year. Amani Hooker ultimately ended up doing it because of the success of Andrew Adams, who they found, as injuries started to plague them and as the season went on. But it sounds like Molden's going to have the opportunity to stay on the field by nature of expanding his role. And how much more can they do with all these different defensive backs that they've spent so much capital, both financially and draft capital, on the last couple of years? There's a lot of different competitions that are going to be playing out there. And it's just fun to be back out there to watch them, to kind of see how much more comfortable last year's rookie class is. That's probably been the biggest takeaway so far, is how much more at ease, how much more comfortable, how much more effective and efficient guys like Treylon Burks, Chigakonkwo, Roger McCreary, just how much better they seem to be at going about their day-to-day practice obligations, responsibilities, how much better they seem to work within the system that they were just getting used to at this time of year, which is something that, is fair to expect, but not always a given. And in talking to the coordinators yesterday, the wide receiver comments from Tim Kelly, we talked about how he looked to focus on the positives of what each player was capable of based on plays that they've seen them make. We talked to Mike Vrabel, and I'm sure, Lucas, you guys carried the press conference on Blaine and Mickey, right?
Yeah.
And what Mike Vrabel had to say, because, Tim, in his earlier media availability, said, we're focused on the positives here. It doesn't benefit us to only focus on the negatives, and I think that was more a response to the question that he was getting than
on the receivers.
Yes, on the receivers. I think that was more him kind of running up against the question that he was being asked, as opposed to how they actually do that thing. Because I have to imagine that they're being shown, the wide receivers are being shown their bad plays. And Mike Vrabel spoke to that after the fact. They're looking for the things that they think these guys are capable of doing within the structure of what they've got. And the mistakes that are being made, if you're going to cite for me, like Tim Kelly did yesterday, Nick Westbrook-Akina against Washington. Do you happen to remember what Nick Westbrook-Akina's stat line was against Washington?
Not off the top of my head.
2 catches, 72 yards, no touchdown. He had a big gain towards the end of the game that set him up in good position, but okay, that's an example of a play being made. And that's fine. That's good. It's good to know that Nick can do that from time to time. And it's not a question of whether any of these players on the roster are capable of making a play as professional athletes. That's the bare minimum. I think everybody's collective question is, can they do it with any level of consistency? Is Nick Westbrook-Akina capable of being, 2 catches for 72 yards a couple weeks in a row, and not just that one point in the season and a season ending where he only had 25 receptions and caught 50% of the passes that were thrown his way?
And that wasn't even his best game of the season, right?
Well, what we're talking, not his best counting stats game of the season. You're correct. But what we're asking him, what the genesis of that conversation yesterday with Tim Kelly was what? Do you have enough at the receiver position to legitimately impact games? That is at the core of the question. And so Tim Kelly citing examples of Kyle Phillips against New York, obvious plays being made there. He had the play that could have set them up for the game winner had Randy not missed it at the end, right? And that's not Kyle. And these are good examples that Tim Kelly is citing. But for every Nick Westbrook-Akina, okay, big play at the end of the game to set your team up in scoring position, 2 catches, 72 yards.
3 catches. 3 catches.
3 catches, 72 yards. Well, what about these?
No, 2 catches. 2 catches. It was 2 catches. I was looking at the targets.
What do you want me to say?
I don't know. You talk for a living, so say something. Did I leave you speechless?
You're the worst. You I expect better from. The other one, who's already taking a smoke break because I think he's been here for 16 hours already. I don't think he leaves. I think he just lives here. That's what I think is happening with Bert. I think that's what he's doing in his spare time now. He's just he's camping out in the station at night.
He lives under the console
looking for
the control room.
Looking for different places to jump scare people. Anyway, so you're going to hear from Mike Vrabel. You'll hear from Elijah Molden, Big Jeff, and Chig as well. In fact, let's talk about Big Jeff coming up next, because that ankle situation still not being resolved, that is a decent concern. And I think that we all know heading into 2023 that the thing that gives the Titans the best chance to impact games consequentially is going to be that front four this season. So we'll talk about that coming up next. You'll hear from Big Jeff, your phone calls as well. 615-737-1045. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. So Jeff Simmons was among the players to meet with us yesterday at OTAs. Welcome back to the show. And he talked about a variety of different things, why it was important to show up to him, important to show up to OTAs to him specifically. I'm sorry.
Moses Moody. It's been a while.
Since we've needed that?
Yeah.
What is Kendrick Perkins? Didn't we talk about making Kendrick Perkins our Titans analyst for a season because he picked him to go to the Super Bowl?
That was the 2021 season?
Yeah, that was the first year we were on the air, and Kendrick Perkins went on First Take and picked the Titans to go to the Super Bowl after they traded for Julio Jones. And he follows me on Twitter. I wanted to find a way to make this work, and we just couldn't work the dates out. That's not fair.
Nobody needed to know he follows you on Twitter.
Yes, they do, because that was the means of me communicating with Kendrick Perkins to try and get him on the show as our weekly Titans analyst.
You can DM Kendrick Perkins whether or not he follows you on Twitter. Completely unnecessary for you to throw that out there. You just want people to know he follows you on Twitter.
No, that's not true. You can't just DM everybody on Twitter. You have to have your DMs open. Does Kendrick Perkins, in fact, have his DMs open?
I'm going to send him one right now.
God, I hope he replies to Robert.
Hey, Big Perk. What's poppin'?
What's poppin'?
What's poppin'? I had a point.
Ooh.
He doesn't. He does not have his DMs open.
Okay.
think he has me
See,
blocked.
that's important. I don't think he has you blocked.
What would you have said about Kendrick Perkins?
I used to tweet about his suit choice all the time. I would tweet at him and be like, Perk, you got to
How?
slim down. You look like Kingpin.
Does he actually have you blocked?
Dude, I can't see anything. I was wondering why no Big Perk tweets were coming up.
I
Told him he needed to perk up.
I
and just-
cannot believe that you are comfortable criticizing somebody else's clothing choices.
Well, yeah, I'm not in front of a camera. Like yesterday, the video that Lucas put out was the first time that anyone has ever seen me in my natural habitat.
God, it was horrifying.
Fashion icon.
It was horrifying.
I got in this industry.
to know that your legs are just up on the on the console and splayed out.
This is what my view every time I turn around.
How else can someone enjoy the back of my hams, man? Nobody else gets to see the back of your hams.
I can't wait till we have to put you on camera.
Whenever I turn around, I see the bottom of Robert's crock and his glute.
Just looking like everything in sports radio has for the entirety of its existence.
Big Raz, is that Austin Huff's character?
Big Raz.
Yeah, love Big Raz.
Somebody
Crocs, loose-fitting clothing, hair bunned but in a mess.
Tommy Hilfiger, like sweat shorts. I respect it.
What's your point, Bert?
Somebody replied yesterday to that video and said I looked like a fifth-year senior showing up for a public speaking class.
You
Yeah,
look
I've
like
been around the
comic.
block a time or two.
Let me tell you a thing or two about football.
That is also something that you look like, but what you most look like is comic book guy from The Simpsons.
I did not. Number one, that dude has a ponytail. There's a difference between having nice flowing locks and having a ponytail like he did. His ponytail says, actually, and mine says, actually. You know? Like, there's a difference. There's a little suave. There's a little juice. There's a little swag on my side.
But do you have a ponytail or a man bun?
It's a man. I mean, okay.
It's a bun.
It's a bun. It's a messy bun, but it's a bun.
Oh, he's letting it loose
A
now.
ponytail, if you just rock the pony, you're either an artist or you're asking somebody to yaga. Did y'all yaga people back when y'all were in school?
No, I'm not entirely certain what that.
It's a you yank
But,
on
you know, not a yank. It's
Okay, don't scare me.
say it.
No.
Yaga.
Yaga.
No, you ask somebody like, hey, what? Do you know what your favorite baseball team is? And they go, I kind of like. And before they answer, you go, the Yankees, and you yank their ponytail.
There were people that did that in my school.
you
I was not one of them.
Are a degenerate. No, the only thing like that I remember doing in like high school is like you'd have a water bottle and you'd use a pen to poke like a hole in the top of the water bottle, and while somebody was walking in front of you down the hallway, just like squirt the back of their pants with it.
It's a classic.
Love it.
I had something to say about Jeff Simmons and his ankle.
We need to get back to jumping to conclusions from OTAs.
Stay on topic.
What do you
Yeah,
want me
stay on
to,
topic.
jumping to conclusions from OTAs, what do you want me to talk about? I got 3 hours and 1 day of Titans practice a week. What do you want me to talk
What are you getting
about
mad at me
today?
for? I'm trying to get us back on track.
You said jumping to conclusions about OTAs. I'm talking about a 300-pound defensive tackle that still has an ankle problem 4 months after the fact.
Yes, let's
What
get back to that.
conclusions am I jumping to? What are you accusing me
That was
of?
more of a broad statement.
Let me hear from Jeff about his health. Can I please?
I wouldn't even say just condition. I think at this point, the condition phases that we've been through. Of course, this offseason, you want to be in shape, you want to get in shape. But like Coach said today, early on when the guys was here during the first phase of OTAs and stuff like that, that's the condition part. Then it's come with the technique. Now we're on the field. So I think my thing is just getting my feet back in the ground. It's been, a while since I've been healthy. It's been a while since I've felt myself. Just being able to go out there and, work on the bags, work with Coach T and individual, then, gets a couple of team reps. I think that's big for me. But, when we talk about just me being here, this is what I love to do. I love the game of football. And, I think when you trying to build your team, your championships, trying to build a championship team, this is where it starts at. And, being here is important to me. Getting healthy is important. I'm not all the way there yet. That's why I'm kind of working my way back into it now. So, like I said, just getting back on the field with them guys, I feel good just to be back out there with them. And I think that, like I said, that's where you build your team, the standard. When we talk about the standard, when they see me out there with the guys, I think it means something to our team that, even when I'm rehabbing or just out there running to the ball or whatever it may be, doing a pursuit drill we did today, I think just shows what we're about here in Tennessee. No matter who you are, that's how we want people who are going to buy into our standards.
So that's Jeffrey Simmons yesterday at the podium. And he mentions that he's not 100% healthy, but he's been working to that effect. Now, Jeff is called Big Jeff for a reason. He is a large man, and an ankle injury for a human being that size is going to take some time to heal. We never found out the extent of the ankle injury with Jeff.
It must have been nasty. I mean, it must have been really bad
He
that
was
we're sitting
talking
here
about,
in May.
That's what I'm saying. Because, all right, so think about it this way. The ankle injury was Kansas City, okay? Or at least that it was injured to the point where it was debilitating enough for him to miss time, right? We don't know exactly when Jeff got hurt. We just know that Kansas City is the moment where it was hurt bad enough to have to, in his own words, be shooting it up for 8 weeks of the season. So we're going back to November, basically, with the Kansas City Chiefs game. He's playing on it for a considerable amount of time throughout the course of the season. We come back after an offseason, 4 months removed, and he's still talking about the fact that he's not healthy. And listen, I don't want to fear monger, right? That's my concern with talking about things like this, because I don't know the extent of his injury, and he could be fine. But I do think that what's popping into my head in a moment like this, or at least the question that I have, is how much damage could he have done to himself by continuing to play through that injury when we all understood why, right? He's got a massive contract on the line. It worked to his benefit. Football coaches and executives, they respect that level of toughness, and Jeff was emblematic of that. He broke down in tears with us in the locker room in Jacksonville after it was over, because it's a lot. It's a lot. And he still found ways to be out there and available. His productivity suffered, there's no question, but he was out there and available in ways that mattered to that team. So what somebody says in the F&M Bank chat, Dylan, he says, my fear is when Jeff played on the hurt ankle, it made the initial injury worse, and now it's something that's going to nag him going into the season. Because now we're talking about him just trying to get as healthy as humanly possible, but it's a whole new season. So like I said, this may all end up being a lot of talk instead of stuff that is actually an issue. So I want to make sure that I'm prefacing this conversation with that, without having direct access to Jeff's medicals. And even if I did have access to Jeff's medicals like that, I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't tell you how impactful or not impactful something like that could be. But I do think to hear that yesterday was concerning. And while I think a lot of people appreciate the fact that Jeff's here, Jeff's out there, Jeff's doing as much as he can, the fact that it's still doing as much as he can on May the 24th, that's not great. Now, they know they need to matter. We know they need to matter. The best version of them last year was when this front four was able to get consistent pressure without sending additional blitzers, right? When the Titans defense is at its most effective, that's what's at the core of this thing. And we asked Jeff Simmons about that yesterday. This was Jeff Simmons talking about the front four situation where they're trying to make it the best and biggest advantage that they have as a football team right now.
I mean, I'm a firm, but I've been saying that since I got here. You know, we talk about, are we not getting turnover? We talking about, not affecting a quarterback. Quarterback sitting in the pocket. I mean, we closer to the ball than the DB. So, if we, not winning our one-on-ones, we not coordinating our rush, we letting the quarterback get out of the pocket. It's because of us up front. And, that's where it starts at. We closer to the ball. When the ball, center get his hand on the ball, we got a nose tackle right there. We got a 3 technique right there. So I'm a firm believer start up front, no matter offense, defense, whatever. So we have to be better this year. We affect the quarterback a little bit, but, when we talk about taking the next step, we're talking about, not just batted balls at the line of scrimmage, not just, sacks. How can we get the ball off the quarterback? Because that's where that's who have touched the ball the most on the field. Because the quarterback have to touch the ball. So that's the message, especially when we talk about turnover, especially the front forward, not just getting sacks. How can we get the ball off the quarterback too?
So that's Jeff Simmons talking about the impact the front four needs to have again this season. Jameson on the chat says you would think if he could do more damage to it, talking about the ankle last season, that the training staff wouldn't let him go back out there. So there's a couple of elements to that. Because, that's a completely fair assumption, right? But do you remember what Vrabel said about Derrick Henry when he broke his or when the fracture happened against the Colts? Yeah, and Derrick played the game anyway?
There was a level of trust in Derrick that, yes, I'm good. Put me back out there.
They medically cleared him.
In game.
And Derrick was asked, are you comfortable going back out there? And when Derrick said yes, Vrabel said to us afterwards when we asked him that question, because that was, of course, the concern. Did you jeopardize him, essentially, by allowing him to go back out there? And what Mike Vrabel said is some players have an earned right to get to decide whether they're going back out there or not if we have medically cleared them. But to medically clear them may not necessarily mean what you think it means. You know what I'm saying?
It's in game, right? Like the Derrick thing was in the middle of a football game.
Like a football game is going on. It's a divisional game. It's the Colts, and you need Derrick Henry, or you know that Derrick Henry is critical to you having success in that moment. Now, they ended up winning that game anyway with Derrick. Well, wait, no, did they win that Colts game?
I believe so.
That was 21?
Yeah, 2021. Because they swept.
Yeah. Okay.
In 21.
I just wanted to make sure that I remembered correctly. They ended up winning that Colts game, but obviously things were a struggle to kind of figure out, and then they got Deontay Foreman, and they were able to get their running game back on track. But we understood the situation for them at the time. So while it may seem like, okay, if they medically clear him in game and allow him to go back out there, surely that means that it wouldn't cause further damage, that they wouldn't allow him to potentially cause further damage to himself. And there's a degree of that is true, but also there's a lot of things happening during the course of a football game, and all they've got is that little blue tent to figure things out. 615-737-1045 is the number if you would like to join the discussion. Let's go to Matt in Lafayette up next. Hey, Matt.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I was looking at Ryan Tannehill's 2 most successful years, and both years he had around 3,800 yards. And if you look at Traylon Burks, what he had last year, and Chig, who are the 2 best wide receivers, I would say. I think they will both have better years this year. So let's say that Traylon Burks has 800 yards receiving, and Chig and the other tight end, let's say they make up for 800 to 1,000. That leaves around 2,200 yards, 2,000, 2,200 yards between the rest of the receiving corps, to make up that difference, just to have like a competitive edge. And I just don't think that they have that yardage between them. Every receiver would have to have a career year this year, and I just don't believe that that's possible unless we get somebody else in there. I'll hang up with you guys. Thanks.
Well, I guess the question is who you're getting, Matt. Like where I know Matt hung up, but like my question to you is who are you getting? DeAndre Hopkins is the thing that is most available. Would we all say that the best and most available option right now, theoretically, is Hopkins?
Theoretically.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's my question to Matt. Who are you adding? the majority of the cards have been played at this point. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just going to take us getting through OTAs, getting through training camp, and getting to the regular season with a 53-man roster that looks similar to what this wide receiver core looked like last year for people to accept. Yeah, it's probably going to be largely the same with the addition of Chris Moore and potentially Colton Dow. But he brought up Tannehill's career best seasons, and I think he was talking about specifically career best Titans seasons because Ryan Tannehill has been a 4,000-yard passer twice in his career, both seasons with Miami in 2014 and 2015. 4,045 yards. I don't know why that was so hard for me. And 4,208 yards in 2015.
Captain Trips on the F&M Bank chat says, Jacob Copeland, baby. The UDFA out of Maryland, the Florida transfer.
Yeah, they've got him. They've got Kearis Jackson. And, okay, maybe one of those guys makes the roster. And you're not necessarily thinking about him because he's a UDFA. But, like, beyond the level of talent that you would be able to add is basically equitable to what you have out there on the field right now. Like, there are no substantial upgrades available to you unless there's this hypothetical Hopkins deal that just seems completely implausible for them right now. It just doesn't make sense. And, I guess my question with the Hopkins thing is, why am I just down on it because I foresee unbelievable disappointment with that because that's been the track record of aging wide receivers in years past, and particularly with this franchise. Like, is what I'm doing to DeAndre Hopkins fair just because I've seen it happen in almost every other instance with these veteran wide receivers at the end of their careers, the way that the Titans have tried to bring in before? And by the way, other franchises have done this too, and it's not worked out. That position in particular, it doesn't age terribly well. So I don't know if what I'm doing to Hopkins is fair, but I know that the precedent exists that would make it really, really hard for him to live up to your expectations. The way that a lot, if they were to do some kind of miracle deal for him, the way that would immediately be thrust on DeAndre Hopkins if he was to end up basically anywhere at this point.
And would he want to be here?
God, no. I mean, can you imagine that he listed the players that he would want to play with, and it was all the quarterbacks that you'd expect, right? Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, Herbert was mentioned. I'm sure there was a couple other that I can't remember, but it's basically all of the best quarterbacks at the top of the sport. And they all very much probably average between 25 and 30 passing attempts a game, where the career or the season high for the Titans last year was 37, right? Was that the Dobbs-Cowboys game?
Yep.
37 dropbacks.
Attempts, yeah.
And that passing attempts, that was like the height. That was by far and away the most times that they had passed in a game. And it's not necessarily passing volume, but like DeAndre Hopkins is going to look around and be like, what, I'm going to block? Stop. Please. People are saying that Corey Davis is more realistic. They've already said he's going to be a Jet. You're going to trade for Corey Davis? Get out of here. He's not survived completely roster cuts, but they've not waived him in the first round of these things. And if something happens to him or he is appreciably outperformed, this year in Jets training camp and he doesn't make that roster, then okay, maybe we can talk about that. But that's August. That's September before we actually get there. Right now, what's available to you is not sufficient enough to provide you with the kind of upgrade that I think you're after. Let's get to some SEC observations. Baseball, unfortunately for the Tennessee Volunteers, Lucas is going to tell us about what went down in the SEC tournament and what to expect from Vanderbilt coming up next. So we're going to get to Lucas's SEC observations here in just a second. R.I.P. Pop Smoke. But I got distracted by an article that I was scrolling by on my Twitter timeline from CNN. Have you guys been paying attention? Do either of you watch the news? Yeah, that's what I thought.
I don't even have cable.
Are either of you informed about anything other than the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Volunteers?
Quiz us.
Have you seen this story about New York City sinking into the sea?
No, but that sounds like something that's right up my alley.
New York City is sinking under the collective weight of all its buildings, a new study has found.
What?
This gradual process could spell trouble for a city around which the sea level has been rising more than twice as fast as the global rate and is projected to rise between 8 and 30 inches by 2050. So they're saying that it's a long time off before the ocean completely envelops New York, but the combined weight of let me see how many buildings, 1,084,954 buildings that accumulates or that amounts to 1.68 trillion pounds, roughly 1.9 million fully loaded Boeing 747-400s is what the equivalent of that is. New York City is sinking into the sea.
I think they're burying the lead there. What you can't really do anything about the weight of the building, but you know what New York has in spades? Rats. I would love to know the collective weight of rats. And
big rats. Yeah.
Can we introduce a new species of cat or perhaps a snake that could live in the subways and hunt?
Just release snakes and bobcats into the streets of New York.
You know where that's already a problem? Miami, where people have all these exotic snakes and they're just releasing them into the jungle, and now they're taking over things like the Everglades because we have ruined all of the different environments for these things.
We've solved that, though. New York has no Everglades. They've chopped it all down. There's nowhere for snakes to run to. If you want to live somewhere, you got to live in the sewers. So I would say maybe introduce something to get rid of all the rats. Maybe get maybe a cat. I would say
they have already done that. Again, you don't pay attention to the news. Have you not seen the headlines about New York's rat czar? This is an actual title for
a woman, a man that rules over the rats with an iron fist.
Her job is the governance of rats in New York City, the eradication of rats.
Oh, the eradication of the New York rats? Are you sure she's not on their side?
That does
she
sound
could
like
she could be a mole.
Boo.
I thought that was decent.
Mole, it's not even the same animal.
Yeah, you're not. You can't. What's its genus? Where do moles belong? I feel like they're somewhere with shrews.
I just love that the two of you think that you're good enough at jokes to be the arbiters of comedy back there. With
you don't know comedy.
And God knows what other jokes you two are back there making on a regular. Those are the ones that make it to air. I want to know what has to get left on the cutting room floor back there.
You know what else is succumbing underneath its own weight? The Tennessee Volunteer Baseball Program.
What a lovely transition.
Fantastic work.
Go ahead.
One and done. Tennessee, one and done at the perpetually rain-delayed SEC tournament in Hoover, Alabama. Every damn year, we got to sit through these delays in Hoover. I digress. Tennessee loses 3-0 in a single elimination game to Texas A&M, who they swept earlier in the season. And the Vols get one hit on the day. Christian Scott, the only hit for Tennessee on the evening, or on the afternoon, I should say, as they go down. They have left Hoover, and they will get into the postseason. Probably going to be tough for Tennessee to host a regional. We will see what happens. But, man, the Vols were hot going into the SEC tournament. I mean, obviously started the season rough, a 5-10 start to SEC play, and the turning point was that Vanderbilt series where Vandy got off to the 10-0 start in conference play, best in program history. Vandy's 13-2 in SEC play going into Knoxville. And then the sweep that Tennessee had over Vanderbilt at home. After Vanderbilt's 13-2 start, they finished the season 6-9 in SEC play. Tennessee finished the year 11-5 in SEC play, including that sweep over Vanderbilt from that point on. So I think Tennessee was the hotter team, certainly going into the SEC tournament, but they go one and done against Texas A&M. And the problems that kind of plagued Tennessee early in the season, basically lack of clutch hitting to supplement what was solid pitching good enough to win you a game, kind of came back around and bit Tennessee against Texas A&M. Vanderbilt has yet to start. They are a top 4 seed, so they have been sitting and waiting as Auburn beat Missouri 10-4 yesterday. So Vanderbilt will start their SEC tournament against Auburn tonight. That's going to be an 8 p.m. first pitch. You can watch it on SEC Network down in Hoover.
So we understood the deficiencies of this year's Tennessee team, and rather the inconsistencies. We thought we'd seen them iron it out, right? Down the stretch in SEC play. Like, it really felt like they'd found the missing pieces that we're looking for as far as the hitting consistency and the pitching, as we talked about. It looked, I think, if you just looked at the box scores for Tennessee earlier in the year, you might look at some of the lopsided results and say that the pitching was the issue. But then when you went back and actually paid attention to how these games were going and what was actually resulting in the lopsided results, it was less about the pitching than it was about the ability to keep up, it felt like, throughout the course of the season. So we'll see what happens with them now that the at least the tournament play for them, the conference tournament play for them, is over. How do we feel about Vanderbilt's chances at this point?
Feel good. It's Tim Corbin in the postseason. You feel good about Vanderbilt's chances. It feels like they're almost due another SEC title. It's been a couple of years. I mean, Tennessee has made the run the last 2 years. The Vols lost in the SEC championship game to Arkansas 2 years ago, and then Tennessee was able to win the SEC tournament 1 year ago, and then they go one and done in 2023. College baseball is weird. Ole Miss last season got swept early in the season by Tennessee when they were the number 1 team in the country. They got run-ruled multiple times in that series. They had a very early exit from Hoover, Ole Miss did, and then they turned around and they went to the College World Series and they won the national title. So college baseball, it's a fickle sport. It's going to be interesting to see how this postseason goes. Jameson in the F&M Bank chat says, so Vols fans can blame it on the rain this time. It's usually the refs, right? That's correct, Jameson. It wasn't the umpires this time. It was the rain, the reason Tennessee lost.
Why do you get so defensive?
I didn't get defensive.
You did.
No, I didn't.
It was very passive. Bert, was that not very passive-aggressive of him?
Seemed a little gauche. Read it in that term. But I feel for you. I really do. Because as your team lost yesterday, my team also lost in extra innings to the USF Bulls. 12-11, a game that they were dominating. But it's not that I'm upset about. And we've got dumbest thing in sports today, right?
Yes.
My dumbest thing in sports revolves around East Carolina's first inning ejection that happened yesterday. We'll get to that with dumbest thing in sports. I don't want to use it here.
Why are you doing a radio
I'm teasing
piece?
it.
Are you ending the segment?
Every day he says, "Can you be better at your job? Can you be more of a professional? Can you stop coming in here and just slouching all around this prolific radio program that Lucas and I try to do every day?"
All
and
fair
what
requests.
happens? What happens the one time I try to be a professional? Why are you teasing?
It's never enough, is it?
It's never enough. Never good enough. You know what? I might take my talents to South Beach, buddy.
You're just upset that Robert got a fake Twitter account.
You know what? That's just good coaching.
Let me get some whans in the chat.
I'm never. Let me see. No, he wants instant gratification.
Where my Burt babies at?
Because I won't give him the instant gratification that he craves, he thinks it's a personal slight. No, I'm trying to make you better. It seems to have worked. And then when it's not good enough, I want it to yet still be better. Better is not good enough.
You're just upset that somebody created a Twitter account called @BurtsBabies, baby spelled BAYBEEZ.
I hate that.
And the Twitter name is Wasquad. So you're just upset that Robert got a fake account using his name that he didn't have to create the way you did.
Whans in the chat.
So you're alleging that we can't even read the name.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
So there's no way for me to defend myself because there's been a couple of these things floating out there for a handful of years now, but I can't say the name of the burner account.
I think you created it in an effort to get that blue check that you so desperately craved before the blue check just became something that you pay for.
I wouldn't have been above it at the time.
I know.
I think you could say the @ The @ is pretty accurate. Buck has low T.
Well, perhaps I'll tell you where you can get that rectified later in the show. But in the meantime, the dumbest thing in sports is next.
It is straight up 11 o'clock. Good morning from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Select Titans players met with the media on Tuesday from OTAs, and wide receiver Chris Moore talked about blocking out the outside noise when it comes to the Titans wide receiver room.
I don't really listen to any of that because, to be honest, that's just people's opinions who aren't in this building and who don't see exactly what goes on every day and don't know the full situation. So I just take it with a grain of salt, and all we can really do personally is just work every day and just try to win games, because that's all that really matters at the end of the day. If we're winning games, it doesn't matter what the numbers are.
Nashville Soccer Club's unbeaten run of 8 games in all competitions came to an end on Tuesday. A 2-1 loss at Miami in the U.S. Open Cup round of 16. They will return to MLS regular season play Sunday night, hosting Columbus Crew. Nashville is currently second in the Eastern Conference table. NBA playoffs, the Boston Celtics stayed alive, winning Game 4 in Miami 116-99, avoiding an Eastern Conference final sweep. They returned to Boston for Game 5 on Thursday. And in the NHL, the Vegas Golden Knights got one step closer to a sweep 4-0 rout of the Dallas Stars in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals. College baseball, Tennessee went one and done in the SEC tournament Tuesday, a 3-0 single elimination loss to Texas A&M. Vanderbilt taking on Auburn tonight in Hoover. First pitch scheduled for 8 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for hopping in if you're just now turning your radio on or if you're just now tuning in through the app, wherever you're hanging out with us today. We're grateful for you doing so. 615-737-1045. That's the number that you call, and you're going to want to call it right now with your dumbest thing in sports this week, because that's what we do at this time of day.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
What the is this?
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some warning.
something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot.
You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Rising Show.
615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Now, I'm going to preface mine with this, because this is obviously a sensitive situation, and the meaning of the cryptic social media post by Ja Morant, we don't yet know. What we know is that he put up a bunch of cryptic social media posts and that he's since deleted them. But the messaging around it, pretty concerning. Have you guys seen these?
No.
So it's a number of short messages with 4 different pictures on his story, okay? It says, love you, Ma, with a picture of him and his mother. Next, love you, Pops, with him and his dad. Next, you're the greatest baby girl, with him and his daughter. And then it just says bye on it. Now, I don't know what Ja is trying to get at. I don't know what kind of stuff may be swirling around there. And I want to be careful not to, be hypercritical of social media messages that I don't know exactly what he's trying to say. But all I know is the dumbest thing in sports this week is the fact that this man still has his phone and is on social media this way. That's going to continue to gather headlines and cause stirs where it's not necessary. I don't understand why this is so hard to remove him from. You know what I'm saying? And because I don't understand, I don't want to be like, I'm not gonna blast him for it, right? Like, I'm not gonna say, oh, what an idiot, he's posting on social media again, get him away from that. Like, I'm not doing that today. But whatever the situation is around Ja Morant that is not getting the message through to him, hey man, you just gotta leave it alone. That is the dumbest thing in sports to me, because I don't understand how this keeps happening with a frequency that it continues to do. It's just ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, hope that can all get figured out. My dumbest thing in sports this week has to be the Georgia football program. I have a proposal for Kirby Smart. Whenever you welcome back your football team for the 2023 season, have a big bucket sitting by the locker room. And in that bucket, Georgia football players just put their car keys in it when they walk into the locker room, and they don't get them back for the rest of football season.
Like a house party to keep your friends from getting DUIs. Everybody put your keys in the bucket. Nobody move. What the hell is going on with Georgia football, and why are they all racing in the streets?
The fourth driving-related arrest by a Georgia Bulldogs football player has happened in this offseason alone. Georgia senior wide receiver, I hope I'm saying his last name correctly, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, was arrested and charged with reckless driving and speeding by Athens-Clarke County Police on Tuesday, just yesterday. Rosemy-Jacksaint from Pompano Beach, Florida, this is the ESPN report by Alex Scarborough, posted a $2,000 bond and was released within an hour after being charged with the pair of misdemeanors. So let's recap. Obviously, the biggest headline of all of these arrests, or I won't say they weren't all arrests, especially the night of, but in March, star defensive lineman Jalen Carter, first-round pick, top 10, went to the Philadelphia Eagles, pleaded no contest to misdemeanor charges of reckless driving and racing. Obviously, that was a very serious situation that led to the death of two people, a Georgia football player, Devin Willock, and a staffer, Chandler LaCroix. It was also found that Jalen Carter was driving with a suspended license on that night. Linebacker Jamon Dumas-Johnson was also charged with reckless driving and street racing in a separate incident earlier in January. Wide receiver Denylon Morissette was charged in May with DUI, driving too fast for conditions, following too closely, and Class D license restrictions. And Georgia head coach Kirby Smart said in March, police met with the team about the dangers of street racing last summer. So Kirby's had police officers in to talk to his team about the dangers of street racing. This offseason alone, 4 incidents with Georgia football players that are out here in the streets recklessly. What in the world is going on? I don't think I've ever seen a thread like this, with every incident having something in common as far as reckless driving is concerned. Like, this happens, college football programs, players get arrested, players get in trouble, they're kids, they make dumb mistakes, I get it. But my goodness, at some point it becomes a trend. And for me,
why? Yeah, that's such a weird trend.
Yeah. For me, this is officially a trend that Georgia football players are just out here in the streets recklessly driving throughout Athens, Georgia. Put their keys in a bucket, Kirby. I mean, come on. What is going on in here?
I think the thing that has always been so remarkable about Nick Saban to me, beyond, obvious greatness and championships and a coach for, all time, basically, at this point. They don't really have off-field incidents like this. They find ways to win at the highest level of the sport. They've been getting the best players. It doesn't matter what backgrounds these guys come from or what their previous influences might have been. Like, by the time they get to Tuscaloosa, Nick Saban, what is the biggest story that an Alabama football player has had where he's gotten into trouble for something off the field in recent memory? I'm sure that there is one that could be cited, one or two in the last couple of years that maybe I'm just completely blanking on. But I think consistently Nick Saban has found a way to avoid these things, or at least put a structure in place to prevent these things from, one, either happening, or two, from seeing the light of day. However he's doing it, you don't really find out about. If they're having problems, you don't find out about it. So I think that's always been kind of a thing to the side of Nick Saban, is that they find ways to do this, and that program is really not plagued with the problems that you might expect somebody playing and recruiting at that high of a level might.
There was one recently this offseason. Tony Mitchell, the freshman defensive back, was arrested with felony marijuana possession. He tried to speed away from cops.
That's right. Because
it wasn't just like he had a lot of marijuana in his car, a loaded gun, all those things.
Nick Saban made the wrong place, wrong time incident comment that
no such thing as wrong place, wrong time.
Which was taken as a shot at Nate Oates, famously, because of the situation that Nate Oates has just worked his way through, not successfully, by the way.
And Alabama Athletics has had a tough offseason. Associate athletic director gets arrested. Obviously, the Darius Miles incident, charged with capital murder, and the whole Alabama basketball scandal with Brandon Miller's involvement. So the athletics department has had a rough offseason as well, almost just as bad as Georgia. I mean, really serious incidents that have resulted in people's deaths. But the fact that with Georgia, it just seems to be this common thread with the football program of just these guys getting behind a wheel and doing reckless things. Yeah, I mean,
Well, but somebody in the F&M Bank chat just brought up a great point, and I don't know if I'm reaching here with this or if they're reaching here with this, but like think about Isaiah Wilson.
Oh yeah, doing donuts on Charlotte Pike.
But like that, there were 2 confirmed incidents of him wrecking or totaling cars, but there were far more that were unconfirmed, that were rumored to have happened or that were discussed as having happened, so much so to the point where he had to basically be removed from a situation where he could drive himself.
It's crazy.
And that's a Georgia player. I don't know if that's too far of a connection to draw, but that is such a bizarre kind of trend to realize. Like what could possibly be influencing them that way? Other than, I don't know, a general lack of accountability or sense of responsibility behind the wheel of a vehicle. Okay, I'm sorry. We're probably dwelling too long on this, and I don't want to unfairly put that on like Georgia by saying, well, Isaiah Wilson had one too, 2 years removed from all these other things happening. Like this is a pretty recent string of things. But still, how bizarre. Bert, do you have one?
Do I have one? I teased it on the way out, you goober.
Yesterday,
the AAC regular season champs fell in dramatic fashion, 12-11 to the USF Bulls. But that is not what my dumbest thing in sports is. My dumbest thing in sports is when umpires take the game of baseball in one hand and their morals in the other. In the first round, or in the first inning, a home run was hit by Jacob Starling. He pranced around the bases. He came to collect his one run at home base.
For ECU.
For East Carolina, correct. And
who he failed to mention was the defending AAC champions.
Well, they're not defending. They're the regular season champions.
Okay.
You sit over there and listen to this. After rounding the bases, collecting his run, heading back to the dugout, teammate Josh Gross reaches out, licks into his pocket, pulls out a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and presents it to him as a gift. Here, you may have a PB&J for your home run efforts. One American Athletic Conference umpire took issue with this and threw Josh Gross out of the game for presenting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to his teammate. Something that he has been doing all year. Anytime someone gets a home run, they get a PB&J from my man. The umpire was having none of it.
Fresh? Are these stored in individual Ziploc baggies and
I don't
prepared
know.
beforehand? Like, how is the PB&J coming to be?
It was in a baggie, a little sandwich baggie. But I'm assuming they're in the locker room, and as soon as you hear that, and it just cranks the ball out, he's like, oh, peanut butter and jelly time, y'all. And he runs and gets one and puts it in his pocket. The umpire threw him out of the game, said you were ejected from today's game. And what that means in the AAC rules is that means he is also suspended for today's game against Cincinnati. That's dumb. It's stupid. It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Move on. What are we doing here? Let them boys play.
So how did he do it? Did he go up to home plate and hand it to him? Did he wait for him to come to the dugout?
That is where they say the issue was. He came onto the field to present him with a peanut butter and jelly. If he would have handed it to him in the dugout, no issue. But the fact that he came onto the field, and he had other teammates out there as well, but he came onto the field to give him the PB&J, that was enough for the referee.
What an arbitrary decision.
I know, I'm going to put his face up on Lucas's cam. I should have pulled this picture to put in there. But
so that's what he's been doing all year. Is he's come out onto the field, come out onto home plate. That's he's putting up the umpire's face onto the live stream.
Look at that old man.
So all season long, Gross has been coming up to home plate, like when the teammates congregate, because that happens every time in college baseball. Teammates congregate around home plate. They congratulate their teammate who touches home plate after hitting a homer, but he just hands the PB&J to him.
Hands him a PB&J.
That's crazy.
That's against the rules.
That is a dumbest thing in sports.
Yeah, that's the winner. Are you kidding me? What?
So he will now not be available for today's game against the Bearcats.
Why is it? I mean, why do refs or umps, and not knowing any personally, but like, What is it about that position that makes you feel like that is an okay decision for you to make? Like, who is that about except for you?
Do you feel slighted in some way?
He didn't get a PB&J. He's like, look, why does he get one? You don't think I'm hungry? I'm over here squatted behind the catcher all game. He gets a little hungry back there. You're not you when you're hungry. Sometimes you have to throw somebody out of a baseball game because you didn't get a peanut butter and jelly. I hope he's happy with himself.
You're not you when you're what?
Hungry.
Shadows.
I am hungry.
Now I want a PB&J.
I would like one too. Instead, what we will get is Kevin Byard not showing up to OTAs. That's next. So attendance obviously gets taken at these time of year when whether it's voluntary or not at OTAs. And, of course, people just want to know who's out there, who's not, doesn't matter. So Kevin Byard is among those players, those 3 players, not in attendance at OTAs right now, and that's just fine. It's not the first time that Kevin Byard's missed this stuff. And if his NFL career continues beyond this season, as I imagine it well might, it's probably not the last time that he's going to miss OTAs. It's completely normal for a veteran player, especially one who's got the kind of equity that Kevin Byard does. So it's nothing to freak out about. But you guys have been asking for Kevin Byard updates, and now we're able to provide you with some. So Mike Vrabel was asked about Kevin Byard not being there this week, and this is what the head coach had to say.
No, I mean, there's been years where KB hasn't been here. You know what I mean? I know KB's working hard, and we're staying in contact with him, and, book meets with him on Zoom and get the installation. And, I mean, if we're concerned about KB and his level of fitness and commitment, that's not a concern. I mean, he has a family, and he's an established player, and we would want them all here. But it's voluntary. And told these guys, there were years where I didn't go to New England. And you communicate, and he's communicated. And so I'm very, very confident that, when KB comes back, he'll be in shape, and he'll be ready to go, and he'll know what to do, and he'll be the same great teammate that he always is.
No alarms, right? But here's what I'll say. You know what my main takeaway about all this is? They wouldn't talk about Kevin Byard as if something was going to happen with Kevin Byard, right? But they're not acting as if he's in any danger of not being on this roster this year. That's something that's almost completely evaporated from the situation, yeah?
Yeah, and like Vrabel said, there's been years where he hasn't been there for voluntary stuff.
That's right. It's, Derek's not normally at these things. He just happens to be here this year.
It was a surprise that he was there.
Very much so.
And has anybody ever been concerned about Derek not being at OTAs?
Not once. But there is some kind of so we're it's a two Americas type situation, but not in the traditional sense.
Phone lines are lighting up.
Well, it's been a while since somebody called me. It's been about a week since somebody called me a liberal twerp, so we'll see how long we can go. You have fans who have gone through the offseason that they just have, right? Specifically around who? Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard. Who do they see at practice for OTAs at a time when it's voluntary? That makes them feel much better about the idea that these guys are going to be a part of at least the immediate future in ways that they want to be. Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill, it depends on who you ask. It'd be 50-50 whether they want Ryan Tannehill there or not, but I understand. Kevin Byard is not there. Kevin Byard's just had an offseason that's been a bit tumultuous, more so than most of them have been in his career, where his status with this team is not completely and totally secure, where they have already approached him about a pay cut, where the general manager has spoken to that effect, and where when last anybody checked or last anybody's heard, there has been no solution beyond they asked and Byard said no. Now, we'll see what ends up happening with Kevin Byard. And, the mandatory minicamp is coming up in a short while, right? I don't think it's next week. I have to check my schedule. But it's in the next couple of weeks. And it is completely the expectation of all of them and everybody else around this situation that Kevin Byard is going to be there. And that's just fine. But it no longer seems like there's an implication that Kevin Byard's 2023 team may not be the Tennessee Titans. That uncertainty, maybe not completely, but largely feels like it's been removed.
Would we be talking about this at all if not for the report? That Rand Carthon confirmed, right? It's not just something that was floating out there. Rand said during a presser, yes, we did ask him for a pay cut.
Mm-hmm.
Would we even be talking about this if not for that?
Would be talking about Byard not being here?
Would we have played that Vrabel audio?
No. It's everything that's leading up to it, right? Kevin Byard has been the subject of a lot of different discussions about this team in a very transitional phase with the new general manager. It's a completely fair question to ask, and it's a completely fair thing for Kevin Byard to not be here. Both of those things can be so. We can ask the question. We can say, hey, is there any concern that not having that kind of a leader, that kind of a presence at this time of year matters? And then he can point to Jeff, Derek, Tannehill, everybody else that's out there and be like, no, we're fine. And he'll be the best teammate and leader when he comes back. And that's okay, too.
Lonzo in the F&M Bank chat, who I've noticed, by the way, has changed his name back from Bert's Babies for Life.
Thank God.
Says, but don't act like the local media has not tried to make something out of it with Byard not there.
I've literally just spent this entire segment dismissing anything that would cause you to have concern about this. What do you mean?
That's also almost all you can do at OTAs from a media perspective, right? All right, who's here, who's not?
Yeah, so here's the thing that, and maybe this is inside baseball, but like there are limits on what we're allowed to tell you guys. Like the whole reason that we even have access to one day at this time of year is because there is a set of reporting restrictions that we agree to before we get to go out to these practices. So, and I'm using a complete hypothetical. I'm going to use players from another year just as an example to remove any kind of implication that I might be telling you what happened specifically at practice yesterday. Marcus Mariota completes a 15-yard pass to Khalfani Muhammad. Remember Khalfani Muhammad?
You really pulled that one out of your back pocket.
I remember that name because he was the last pick of my first draft that I covered. I don't know, and because it was the first moment that I realized when a player was about to get cut, like a very, very real on-the-field moment, because for the life of him, that poor dude could not field punts the way that they needed a seventh-round running back to field punts, and he kept dropping them, and there was a moment at training camp where John Robinson just comes up to him and places his hand on Khalfani Muhammad's shoulder, and that's when I knew it was done.
Pop quiz, where did Khalfani Muhammad go to college?
Cal.
Oh, damn, I want Bert to do it. Yeah, he went to Cal.
Well, you can do that to me in college football. You can't do that to me with the team that I've been covering since I've been here anyway. But anyway, so Marcus Mariota completes a 15-yard pass to Khalfani Muhammad on an in-breaking route in the middle of the field, right? Andre Dillard, oh, damn it. I've started mixing and matching players from different years. Point being, I can't give you specifics as to what happened on the practice field yesterday. I can tell you that Tajay Spears looked good. I can tell you that I can speak generally. I can tell you that his receiving ability should not be in question at this point for those of you who might have had those questions about him or just generally getting to know him. But I can't tell you what evidence I have of that based on specific plays, specific things that were being done on the field of play. So that, I think, is what people have to understand about reporting at this time of year is there's stuff that we get to see. We get to see a lot of it, and the vast majority of it we can't talk about on a regular basis. What did you say?
So Isaiah Molden getting
Elijah?
What did I say?
Isaiah.
Wow. Elijah Molden.
Do we feel like we're just a beat off today, collectively?
Modi move.
What did he say?
What, you've not heard that clip before? How have you not heard that clip before?
I don't think that's what he's referencing. Going to move past that one. Elijah Molden getting work at safety. Do you believe that?
Why? What did he do?
No,
we'll talk about it during the break. Yeah. Elijah Molden getting work at safety. Do you believe that is in part due to Kevin Byard not being there, or do you think that we would be seeing that regardless?
Yes.
Okay, that didn't answer my question.
It answers both in the affirmative, yes.
Yes, we would see it regardless, and yes, it's in part because I feel like that's an either-or type of thing.
No, I will tell you why it is both. Yes, because Kevin Byard was not out there. They needed a running mate for Amani Hooker. Yes, because they have way too many defensive backs right now, but I think they can find a way to get the vast majority of them on the field in some form or fashion. I think Elijah Molden, at this point, that nickel job no longer seems like it's his to lose, right? And his availability last year, whether you want to say that cost him or, general improvements made elsewhere in the secondary, right? Elijah Molden no longer seems like the favorite to be the Titans starting slot corner. We can say pretty definitively that we know that Fulton will be one, that we know McCreary will either be 2 or slot, and that Murphy Bunting is probably going to factor in some way, shape, or form. So where does that relegate Elijah Molden to? Well, remember, when they had better safety depth in terms of being able to play Andrew Adams and Amani Hooker at the same time, then Amani Hooker, they found ways to keep him on the field in the nickel and in dime. I think that Elijah Molden can be better safety depth, can improve the safety depth that they don't have on the roster or that they didn't add to the roster, and also still factor into the cornerback conversation based on the different looks that this team is prepared to present with all the different personnel that they have.
What did he play more of at Washington? You got to refresh my memory.
So he was as much safety as he was corner.
Yeah.
But that's not something that they have until this point, have asked him to do with the Titans.
And didn't get much of an opportunity to ask him to do a whole lot of anything in 2022.
People are saying that I said a dirty phrase and I didn't realize it.
Yeah, they sniffed it out.
But I didn't.
F&M Bank Chat's on top of it. We'll address it.
Are you doing more innuendo?
Here's Elijah Molden talking about working at safety.
You're definitely... you just got to kind of get used to, like, the angles. You're deeper back there. You're kind of more... I guess you're like the commander of the defense. But I think at nickel, the way I kind of communicate at that position is already pretty similar. So, yeah. There is, but at the same time, like, I'm trying to kind of elevate my game because I don't ever really want to come into a practice and, like, I mean, obviously I want to be comfortable, but I don't want to be, like, lackadaisical and too comfortable. So what that means for me is just, like, learning a new position and then also just kind of, like, test the limits each and every day. You know what I mean?
So that's Elijah Molden. And talking about his ability to display that versatile skill set that we know that they like all of their players to have, right? And in addition to that, I had a little bit of conversation with him. I didn't take a video of it or anything, and I tried to record the audio, and apparently I hit the wrong button. But his health situation, where he came back from the groin injury last year and was very quickly back out of the lineup because of the groin injury. And I asked him basically, did you learn anything about how to manage yourself, both in terms of like your excitement level to get back out there, balanced against what your body is telling you based on injury? And he said that experience with the groin in two separate situations did teach him a great deal about how to better compartmentalize everything that's going on while understanding that there are going to be certain pressures to get back out on the field, not necessarily like overt pressures, but assumed pressures, because your teammates want you to get back out there. You want to get back out there with your teammates and with your coaches and all these different things, but you may not be paying attention to what your body is trying to tell you at the time. 615-737-1045. Lucas told me, by the way, while we were listening to Elijah Molden, what the joke that I made accidentally was. Bert, you're a child. Kenston
Agreed.
is next. Hey, Kenston.
Hey, what's up, Buck? Question, something I wanted to bring up about, I know you hadn't touched on it, talking about Elijah Molden, but with Malik Willis and how we think this third quarterback rule kind of is people assuming it's going to be him. But I kind of had a thought that what if Malik, like these other guys that we hope takes a jump in year two, takes a jump, and Vrabel says, Malik's the number 2 quarterback right now, and based on Jim Wise, what he put out his observations, looks like Malik was thrown to the second string. Malik doesn't have to be that Tannehill, but what if he's good enough to hold off Levis in the preseason? I think people kind of think about that as an afterthought. And what if Levis kind of starts off as the third emergency quarterback, not because he's bad, and I like Levis, but because Malik shows such an improvement in year 2. You're going to hear what you think about that. Thanks, Buck.
Sure. I appreciate the call. I think that's a completely feasible possibility. Here's what I would say to you, Kenston. If that indeed does happen, and just because it's a lesser discussed possibility here does not mean that it's impossible by any stretch of the imagination. If that was to happen, it would all but guarantee that they keep 3 quarterbacks if Malik wins the backup job. Let's hear from Mike Vrabel about that specific rule change, because I want you to hear it from the head coach, and then I'll kind of explain how I think it impacts them specifically and rather the NFL at large. But just to kind of refresh your memory, the NFL passed a bylaw earlier this week at the owners' meetings in Minnesota, which would allow a team to take a quarterback, a third quarterback, who is already on their 53-man roster, not on their practice squad, not somebody who they've just signed day before the game, right? Somebody who is on their 53 active roster, it would allow them to carry a third emergency quarterback onto their game day roster without burning a 47th or 48th active game day spot.
And you could only use it in an emergency quarterback situation, right?
It cannot be that you bench the first two quarterbacks and say, but I have this third emergency guy that I can use. No. They have to say, or it has to be because of injury. Now, Mike Vrabel made a comment yesterday. In fact, let's hear from Mike Vrabel because you'll understand what I'm saying when he says, when you hear what he's trying to imply about how injuries are going to be determined.
Just to beat off there.
I think what we'll have to do is keep the best in the right 53, however that shakes out, based on where we're at when we get to the end of August. So, if you keep three quarterbacks or you put a quarterback on the active roster on Saturday afternoon and put him on the 53, then he can dress until the other two guys allegedly get hurt.
You hear that last part? Allegedly get hurt.
What's he insinuating there?
What are you insinuating, Mike? What do you mean? Allegedly.
Knee. Go down.
Didn't T.R. Tart have a moment like that against the Colts a couple of years ago where he was being accused of flopping? Allegedly getting hurt. Yeah, somebody's going to try and get away with that. But here's what I'll say, and I think I said this yesterday, but or at whatever point we discussed this bylaw being passed. I don't think it inherently impacts teams during the regular season. Where I think you're going to see this more heavily implemented is by every team that makes the postseason because of what the purpose of the rule was based on what happened to the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship game. So they are trying to protect playoff teams specifically against that, and they've allowed this rule to be applicable at any point throughout the course of the regular season as well. So that, I think, is where you're going to see the biggest impact or the most amount of usage of this bylaw being passed. I do think that the Titans are in a unique situation given the logjam at quarterback to be one of these teams that's a good test case for it from offseason to regular season. So we'll see how they go about balancing these things. And it could all end up in the most predictable thing, which is that they end up with two quarterbacks on the roster heading into the 2023 regular season, and that none of this really takes up as much time as we've given it. But it does add an interesting wrinkle to the kind of roster math that they're going to have to figure out at this point. Let's get into another rule change that we didn't touch on yesterday and why the Titans are going to, well, at least in this season, benefit from what is happening with Thursday Night Football in 2023. We'll tell you what's going on with that coming up next. So there's a variety of different rule amendments, rule adaptations, and changes that the NFL has been approving over the past couple of days. But one thing around Thursday Night Football that we have not discussed, so it's called Resolution JC6. Do you think I lose people as soon as I say the word resolution and then letters and numbers afterwards? Sounds like contract law class that most people didn't want to sit through. But this, I do think, is worth paying attention to for obvious reasons, because now Thursday Night Football can be flexed, but within certain circumstances. So they have been looking at modifying, because they want to put the best games on later in the season. They've been looking at modifying how they handle Thursday Night Football in the same way that you can flex primetime games later on in the season, specifically Sunday Night Football. But what they're saying now is that Thursday Night Football is the only primetime package without flexible scheduling. The membership of the NFL also wishes to apply flexible scheduling, or what they're calling TBD scheduling, for Thursday Night Football on a trial basis. So this is not something that's been completely adopted into the rule book. This is something that they're implementing for a year. Mike Vrabel also said something to the effect of they're trying the new kickoff rule on a trial basis. So these are not things that are hard and fast right now, though this Thursday Night Football flex situation, what, Bert?
I didn't say anything.
No, but I saw based on Lucas's face that you did. I just couldn't hear it.
Just laughed at how quick and in a hurry things happen.
I hate you.
You are the one that railroads the show when this happens. You can just keep on going.
But I can't.
You see me smile at something, and then you got to put a halt to everything.
Because
you just wish you could be in here hanging out with us. You feel like you're missing out on all the fun.
No. In fact, I'm quite grateful that I'm not in that same. Neither of you would last as long as you have if I was in that room full time with you.
Let me tell you something, buddy. If there's something about lasting, we can last. All right, back here.
Like cockroaches.
You're going to be the one that doesn't last. Now get back to quick and in a hurry.
You can't be trusted. Your judgment is terrible. So here's the resolution on a trial basis. Flexible scheduling has been officially expanded to Thursdays, and this is the language in the rule change, such that clubs may be required to switch Sunday afternoon regular season games in weeks 13 to 17. So that's only in weeks 13 to 17 that these Thursday Night Football games can be flexed. So who does that automatically take out of the picture? The Titans are in this particular season, not subjected to Thursday Night Football flex potential because of the time frame that they've established. So they've limited it to a trial basis, and they've limited it to those 4 weeks of the regular season, 13 through 17. I think this is going to cause a lot of problems. It's just a matter of whether the NFL is prepared to eat the noise around it, right?
Amazon can't be thrilled about this, right? If their whole gripe was they want these games to be able to be flexed so they don't just get saddled with you get what you get. If the teams are terrible, then they're just terrible.
No, but this works to their benefit that way.
How so?
Because they'll have an influence on what's getting flexed where.
Sure, but it only applies to weeks 13 through 17, maximum of 2 flexes per season, in a 28 days notice.
You have to give them that much notice for no other reason but people are going to travel to these things.
I'm saying it's such a high bar. I'm just trying to think back to last season. Which game, what Thursday Night Football game in those last 4 weeks of the regular season would have been flexed under those stipulations?
If you can give me a minute, I can pull up last year's Thursday Night Football schedule.
I just think it's almost too high a bar to cross.
I would say that this is being done to placate Amazon because of how last season went. This is being saying, okay, it's probably all those pictures of Goodell and Bezos sitting next to each other in that box for one of the Thursday Night Football games. This is probably what's being discussed. Hey, Raj, these games suck. I'm giving you $78 million a year. You better give me something back on this for how poor the product actually is.
So you're pulling up the 2022 late season Thursday night slate?
I'm pulling up the entire Thursday Night Football schedule for 2022 so I can figure out how it went last year.
Okay, while you do that, I'm going to pull up 2023s to see if we can project what games might be terrible. But we couldn't have done that last year, though. Like Colts-Broncos was not supposed to be the worst game of the season.
So in the window that the league has provided for this season, Week 13 was December the 1st. All right, it was Bills-Patriots. Week 14 was Rams-Raiders. 15 Niners-Seahawks. 16 Jags-Jets. 17 Cowboys-Titans. Cowboys-Titans probably would have been the one flexed out there.
Yeah.
It's non-conference opponent. It didn't matter it mattered for Dallas's playoff implications.
Sure, but we wouldn't have known that 28 days in advance.
We would not have known that 28 days in advance. So Dallas and Tennessee in Week 17 would have most likely been flexed out of Thursday Night Football and something with more competitiveness or more impact at the time. So basically a month ahead of time, that would have been flexed in at that point.
So here are the 5 games that could be flexed. Weeks 13 through 17 on Thursday Night Football this year. You tell me which one you think would be the most likely to get moved. In Week 13, you've got Seahawks-Cowboys. Week 14, Patriots-Steelers. Week 15, Chargers-Raiders. Week 16, Saints-Rams. And Week 17, Jets-Browns.
Raiders-Rams.
Raiders-Rams?
Raiders-Rams. That seems like it could potentially be stinky.
I have no idea what the Rams are going to be.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the Rams were a 5-win football team last year. And that, listen, the whole NFL selling point on why the parity for them works is because of how many teams who didn't make the postseason previously end up making the postseason the following year. Like, they do always have a good turnaround rate that way. But Los Angeles has a lot of different questions around it right now, and I don't know how the Derek Carr experience, or excuse me, he's not with the Raiders anymore.
No, yeah, Jimmy G.
Oh.
Yeah, Derek Carr is a Saint. So, Saints-Rams is the following week.
Oh, you said Saints-Rams.
Yes,
I
I'm
thought
sorry.
you said Raiders-Rams.
Oh, no. Sorry.
I got confused because Raiders-Rams is a Week 14 game that I'm looking at from last year.
No, I'm sorry. Week 15.
Saints-Rams.
The Saints-Rams is Week 16. Week 15, Thursday Night Football this year is Chargers-Raiders.
Okay, Saints-Rams is the one that I think most likely to be flexed because I don't know what Derek Carr is going to look like that late in the season in New Orleans, and I don't know what the Rams are going to be as a football team.
Yeah.
That just given the amount of unknown, that seems the most likely.
Now the Saints could be bad and still contending for a playoff spot in that awful division.
Sure, and what I notice about all of these things is I think each of those games that you mentioned are all within the same conference of one another. The opponents are all AFC or NFC together. There's not a Titans-Cowboys situation.
Correct.
Based on the teams that you've just read me. So they would at least all be favorable in theory down the stretch.
I bet none of them get moved.
I mean, they may not, but this gives Amazon the carrot, basically, to say, hey, we have the option to do this. And by the way, I think if they don't move any games, that's a good enough reason for them to keep it. I think they would rather not move a game if they can help doing it, because it sounds like a hell of a lot more heavy lifting on the front end for the league. We had a caller bring up Malik Willis's improvement, or what might happen if Malik Willis was able to keep a handle on this backup quarterback job. You're going to hear from Mike Vrabel on what Malik Willis has made progress on coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Titans coordinator spoke with media on Tuesday from OTAs, and offensive coordinator Tim Kelly was asked about just how different the offense will look under him in 2023.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a complete overhaul. I mean, obviously there's this program has done a lot of really good things offensively throughout the year. So, just like we talked about whenever the last time I talked to you guys it's going to be about make sure that we're accentuating the things that we do well and being able to make minor adjustments to some of the areas where we need to improvement.
OTAs continue today from Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Titans are on the field as we speak. College baseball, Tennessee went one and done in the SEC tournament Tuesday afternoon, a 3-0 single elimination loss to Texas A&M. Vanderbilt taking on Auburn tonight in Hoover as they start their SEC tournament run. First pitch for the Vandy boys scheduled for 8 p.m. on SEC Network. Currently in progress in the second round down in Hoover. LSU leading South Carolina 8-3 in the top of the 7th. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out if you've been doing so already. Grateful to have you either way. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the discussion as we get ready to wrap up our observations from Titans OTAs yesterday. Now, a lot of curiosity, for obvious reasons, around the quarterback position, and we've got some stuff to share with you on that here in just a second. But to recap briefly, the biggest headlines: Kevin Byard, Christian Fulton, not out there. Elijah Molden working at safety in the absence of Kevin Byard. Jeff Simmons talking about his health, but still available at a very important time of year for a veteran who wants to make sure that he is signaling to the organization that it's just as important to him now as it was before he got paid. And then there's the offense, right? Everybody's curious, all the different pieces and parts. Tim Kelly, wide receivers, quarterbacks all over the place. And Malik Willis in a really, really interesting spot. So I don't know what Will Anderson in the F&M Bank chat is referring to when he asks me, word on the street is Willis looks better than Levis. Can you confirm? What are you smiling about?
Fantastic. Love that. This is what you love about OTAs. Word on the street.
Word on the street. From whom, sir? Which street?
From whomst, as our friend Josh Pate would say.
I don't know where these words or which street they're coming from, but here's what I'll say. Just to put into context, and again, a reminder, one of the 3 days each week is open to us at this time of year. So if there was a day when Willis looked better than Levis, it was not the one this week that was open to us. Now, that doesn't mean that Levis looked better than Willis. I thought they looked fine yesterday. They weren't asking them to do a ton. I will say that they were split up in a way that was noticeable, worth paying attention to, because what they were able to do on the field, I thought was fine. And what we saw from the quarterbacks on the whole is that Levis was getting most of his work during the rookie period, which was towards the end of practice. So Tannehill, sticking with what Mike Vrabel told us on the night that Levis was drafted, Tannehill was first team, Willis second team, and Levis paying attention to both groups, but getting the bulk of his work in yesterday's OTAs with his fellow rookies. So, accounting for all that, there's some things about Levis that you like. There were some things about Levis that you could tell the coaching staff wants him to work on, just as there was for Malik yesterday. But I think of the things that I'm looking for with Malik, can he be more accurate? Can he be more decisive? I will say that based on one day of being out there again with Malik, that I did not notice an appreciable difference in his accuracy. I do think that he sped up is the wrong word to use, but I do think that he was processing things at a more efficient rate and that he was more definitive about where he wanted to go with the ball. Because what would happen when Malik would get a snap last year, right? He'd catch the snap, he'd hold the ball, he'd pat it a couple of times before he decided whether to throw or whether to run, and by then either the defense had gotten to him because he's taking too much time, or he'd try to make a play with his legs and sometimes able to do it, sometimes not. So those are small and subtle differences, but noticeable in ways that you're kind of looking for that progression. Is it enough to fend off Will Levis? Who knows?
What kind of drills are you talking about?
I'm talking
when
about
you talk about accuracy and processing.
I'm talking about team drills. I'm talking about 11 on 11 without, it being full go because you can't have the offensive line and defensive line running into each other, but they have an offensive line and a defensive line out there. Now, I can't tell you who he threw to that made me think that or who was in coverage that made me question his the ball placement, for example. Like, I can't give you those details because those are embargoed.
And no pads.
Helmets. That's it.
Yeah.
So I want to, because Jim, it says Jim freaking Nance in the YouTube chat. That's funny. Says, Buck, are you messing with us on giving Willis that much credit? I'm not. Okay, it's not that much credit. I'm telling you, please don't take it and run with it in a way that is to an extreme. I'm saying that to you that I saw him be slightly more decisive than I have seen him be in the last time that I watched him practice. The last time I watched Malik Willis practice was January. It has been a considerable amount of time. And that was something he said himself when we met with him after practice. And we'll play a little bit of that audio here for you in just a second. But here's what Mike Vrabel was responded when he was asked what he was looking for and what he had been asking himself of Malik Willis heading into this second season.
Well, we're only going to play one quarterback. Yep. So a bigger role it is going to be. They're all trying to earn a starting position on every spot, at every spot, trying to earn a role. But what we'd ask Malik to do is come back with a presence to him. Making sure that when you're the quarterback in 32 NFL franchises, there's a certain demeanor or the way you have to carry yourself and a presence and leadership, and there's a lot that goes into that other than just delivering the football. You have to be really good at delivering the football and being accurate and making great decisions with it and making sure that it goes where it's supposed to go. And I felt like he did that. He came back and, was into it. And, there was certainly a bounce to him, and he's continued to do that. And, just early on in the evaluation process. But that's what he's done.
So the presence part of it, and I don't know what Malik Willis's presence in a huddle is. I can't say that I've been in a huddle with Malik Willis. The most exposure that we've gotten to him is talking to him in the locker room, talking to him after games, preseason, as they were coming off the field yesterday. And I know what Malik Willis is not, at least in media interactions, not an overwhelming, commanding or engaging person, but he's not that's not the fairest place to do the evaluation, right? I'm not making any judgments off Malik Willis's presence because of the way that he deals with a press conference. So I want you to hear from Chig, who has in fact been in a huddle with Malik Willis. Chig Okonkwo, the second-year tight end who came into the same draft class as Malik. Let's hear Chig's estimation of Malik's improvements.
He seems a lot more confident in the huddle, I'd say, especially when he's calling the plays. And, with his reads, he's a lot more decisive, and the ball, still jumps out of his hands. He still has a great arm. I feel like he's gotten really, really accurate, too, with his throws.
So those are all positives. Now, I will say that really, really accurate is not what I observed yesterday, because there was a couple of times when the throw was there to be made, and the place that Malik put it, for one reason or another, the pass was not able to be completed. Again, I know that's very, very broad terms, but I can't give you specifics because of the way that they don't want us talking about things that happen outside of the open period of practice, which is only the first 20 to 25 minutes. So Shane Miles wants to know, what does more bounce mean? That's a good question. What do you think more bounce means within that context?
I mean, it sounded, Chig was talking a lot about his presence.
No, but Mike Vrabel specifically said he came in came back with a bounce to him. Meaning what?
A little pep in his step.
I just things that you hear after the fact, and you're like, oh yeah, bounce. That sounds good. That sounds like something a quarterback should have in practice. And then you go back afterwards. It's like, what does that mean? What does he mean by that? It's incremental improvement. It's a positive. The question now becomes, as they work their way through this quarterback competition, is that incremental improvement enough to fend off the additional competition? Now, Malik Willis was asked about, does he feel any additional pressure? And he said no. He said no in a way that, I don't care how people receive body language or receive the tone in which a player answers our questions. There's a million different things contextually that I think are missing from when people try to evaluate a player based on his comments with the media. And I think that Malik came off short yesterday because it benefits him absolutely none to say anything to us as the second string quarterback now and potentially somebody who's on the fringe of this roster.
Bounce, according to Urban Dictionary. One of the definitions, of which there are many, to have an air of style, fashion, progressiveness, coolness, hipness, spunk, and moxie.
All of those good things. What, you were scared to read the other variations of bounce according to Urban Dictionary?
It's just like bounce, to leave and go do something better, go somewhere else. I don't think that's what we're looking for.
Well, that might be that might be
no, I don't think
that might be more applicable by the time it's all said and done.
Don't do that.
We have no idea. He might be bounced out of here.
No. Swagger, moxie. I think that's what Vrabel's looking for.
I see. I think that for Malik, just please, if you do anything else, and I know this is hard, try not to overreact. It benefits you none to do so, one way or the other. The Malik experience is going to be what it's going to be, and what that is, none of us can say definitively at this point. But if you're asking me which of them looked better yesterday, I would say to you that there was not a large enough sample size or not enough of a difference between the two of them, Levis and Willis, for me to be able to tell you that one had a better day than the other. All I will say to you is that there were some accuracy things that I noticed with Malik that were recurring from last year that I wasn't crazy about, and we'll leave it at that. We can get into some other things that were observed yesterday at practice, some of the new additions, how they managed, how they fared. We'll do that coming up next. If you have questions about what went down at Titans OTAs or questions about anything that you saw that I might be able to answer for you, 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. So for those of you who have been asking for it, the first edition of the Chopped and Screwed, we'll call it, live show, the install that we did on Saturday with
I'm
Greg.
sorry, the what?
Chopped and Screwed.
Never heard that.
What?
Is that a thing people say?
Have you never heard the song by T-Pain?
There's a song by T-Pain called Chopped and Screwed?
I mean, you are clearly culturalist swine if you do not know the vast and deep catalog of T-Pain.
I grew up with T-Pain.
Apparently not.
I am not familiar.
It's literally the entire genre. I think anything that involves autotune could be described as chopped and screwed. But either way.
T-Pain has a lovely voice, by the way.
You remember how she's beautiful. I don't know why he insists. It's beautiful. I don't know why he insists on the use of autotune, because I think it significantly diminishes the vocal capabilities of T-Pain. But that's not what we're here to discuss. Point being, we did that 2.5-hour live show on Saturday, and we thought it was a little much to drop on you all at once when the install normally comes out, which is Wednesday afternoons. So the first episode of that, the first edition of that, is going to be in your podcast feeds this evening at 6 p.m. You can catch the first 30 minutes, and we'll be dropping those in the podcast feed each week until we've exhausted about 2.5 hours worth of podcasts that we did. Now, what we focused on in this episode specifically was organizational structure and what Will Levis means for the future of the franchise, and how that's all applicable. With where the Titans currently are now. I know you're going to. I know you're really going to enjoy that. But there's a couple of different things that I want you to be listening for that I'm now using in how I take my notes and how I study at practice. How much of Levis's game is predicated on mobility, and how much of that mobility was not an option for him in 2022. Beyond changing offensive coordinator, beyond the talent deficiencies that Kentucky had from year over year that we've all discussed ad nauseum, how much of the mobility that Will Levis's game requires that he have was not available to him because of the various injuries that he sustained, and how evident it is that he is much more the player he was in 2021 than he was in 22 because those injuries have at this point been resolved. We can get to that here in just a second. But first, let's go to Bam. Bam in Nashville is next. Hey, Bam.
First, we need to send Lucas to the shadows for not knowing the T-Pain Chopped and Screwed song. That is a classic and a forever classic. So, Lucas, I'm ashamed to call you a friend, man, right now.
I'm ashamed of your phone line, Bam. I'm ashamed of your phone line.
Bam's trying to send me to the shadows from the shadows.
He's sinking into the shadows. Bam. Come back to us. It's okay. It happens. They don't know when you have a bad phone line.
You guys didn't go to Bourbon Street, did you, after the install live to go check out? Bam was playing on Saturday.
Well, so Bam was very gracious to invite us. And because of logistics and the early nature of Greg's flight, he did not venture beyond the analog after the show was done. Now, he did stay, and there were drinks being had by everybody involved for people who showed up for the podcast and stayed the full 2.5 hours. Most people did. I was very, very surprised. I shouldn't say I was surprised by that, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised that many people stuck through a 2.5-hour podcast with 2 intermissions on a Saturday night. So thank you to you guys. That was cool.
Walked out after the second intermission. Why are you all still here?
No, I was thinking in my head, I would be doing something else on this Saturday night, but that's okay. We had a great time. No, I ended up at Tin Roof. Then I shouldn't have. Those things happen from time to time. Here's the thing, though. What do I want to see them accomplish out of OTAs? And what am I most looking for at this time of year when our practice availability is limited, but we know that they are doing things day over day to build upon that day's success or that previous day's failures to try and iron some things out? Is there one thing that we have not talked about today that is as critical a talking point for this team as anything else out there. We have talked about Jeff Simmons. We have talked about Kevin Byard. We have talked about the quarterback situation. We have talked about the secondary, as I mentioned. Is there anything that I've left out that is glaring?
We haven't really talked about the offense.
Exactly.
Every time Chig or Tannehill or really whoever, Traylon Burks referencing the Kendall Briles offense he played under at Arkansas, every player that's been asked about it has insinuated not drastic changes, but pretty big changes, mostly in the speed and tempo of it. But Tim Kelly obviously was a little more toned down when he was asked about the changes to the offense.
That's because Tim Kelly hates us. No, I'm kidding. I told Lucas this, and I don't remember if I said it on the air or not, but I texted his brother, Dennis, the former Titans tackle, and I said, your brother clearly hates speaking to the media, and Dennis just said, yeah, he really lights up a room. That's from his own flesh and blood. Here's the thing, though, that I did glean about the offense. So what's this whole notion of playing faster? Playing faster, we want to play faster. We want the players to play faster. Can I hear from Tim Kelly on the idea of playing faster? Can I please?
I mean, yeah, if we can go out, and again, some of it comes into our ability to go out and execute and play to their speed, whether that's a 4.4, a 4.6, whatever. Our job as coaches is to make sure that those guys are playing as fast as they can and making sure that they're playing as efficiently as possible. And we're in the process of doing that. But, again, I think we're off to a good start.
So that's Tim Kelly talking about what they're trying to accomplish, what they mean by playing faster. Of course, every offense wants to be more efficient. Every offense wants to go faster. This is not faster within, the scope of competency. But what Tim Kelly didn't bring up that Chig Okonkwo did is that they have pared down the play calling language. They have substantially shortened the amount of words that they are using in any given play. So let's hear from Chig on that specifically, because we keep asking him about this notion of playing faster, and we keep asking for more detail, at least as much detail as they're willing to share without giving up competitive advantage. And this was Chig yesterday.
I think that we'll be able to operate a lot faster and a lot cleaner. We cleaned up a lot of code words on our offense to changing, long verbiages in the huddle to just, single words, so we can just play fast and just like one word will tell us the entire play and everybody knows where to line up. It's harder, obviously, to learn, but when we learn, it'll be easier to play.
Okay, so that last part, he kind of lost me. It'll obviously be harder to learn, but when we learn it, it'll be easier to play.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to you?
To learn one play call off of one word would seem easier to me, no?
I mean, I think anytime you're changing terminology and you're condensing more information into one word, but once you have it down, then you have the play call with the snap of a finger.
So like this was, I remember this being a thing after LaFleur, right? Where we would stand on the sidelines close enough to Matt LaFleur, the now Packers head coach, former Titans offensive coordinator. And Matt, the length of words that would come out of his mouth for a single play, because there's a term for the play call. There's a term for the protection. There's a term for what the receivers need to do on that play. There's a term for what the tight ends are going to do on that play. And it becomes this, I mean, you guys have heard these things on the NFL, like mic'd up for sound segments, where it just sounds like a bunch of gibberish and it's all jammed together, but it's them speaking their own language, right? Well, if you're working with younger players and a lot of new and different parts, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, maybe there is a point in time where that group spends more time together and you can add more wrinkles to it to keep yourself from being so, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but using one-word terminology that's easier to figure out.
Just get in the huddle and say turtle, and everybody knows what it means.
What kind of play would turtle be?
Something fast.
And so what, tortoise would be fast and hare would be slow?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. High-level stuff.
They'll never see it coming.
D'Amico Ryans is being like, what the hell does tortoise mean?
Oh, my God.
What are they talking about?
They got us.
I'm one of the best defensive minds in the sport, and they've undone me with tortoise. Damn you, Mike Vrabel, you offensive genius. Damn you, Tim Kelly, and your serial killer eyes. But it does matter, right? Like, think about the amount of times that we're talking about them taking dumb delay of game penalties, right?
Remember what A.J. Brown said on Raw Room podcast?
That they don't change anything.
About the terminology. Yeah, calling out the plays. The Eagles knew everything that was coming.
AJ went on. So, Raw Room, for those of you unfamiliar, Darren Bates, former Titans special teamer and linebacker, hosts a podcast with, is it Jalen Collins? Former defensive back? I think it's Jalen Collins. Anyway, Raw Room podcast, AJ Brown was a guest, and he was talking to them about giving the Eagles everything that the Titans did offensively. And he said after playing them most recently this year, yeah, it's all the exact same. So everything that was there under Downing was kept in place, and it was very easy for somebody on the other side to give it up, right? So now we're talking about paring things down even more so, but using things like what, and I'm certain that not every play is going to be a one-word term in their offense. But what they're saying is that there was enough confusion with enough different moving parts and pieces that we felt we were bogged down by not just what was happening on the field, not just the injuries, but also the play calling terminology needs to be simplified. And you know who probably came away from that Raw Room podcast pissed about the fact that nothing changed over year over year? Tim Kelly and Mike Vrabel. Because those clips were making the rounds. Those clips were all over SportsCenter. I think I think it's going to be interesting to see what exactly this offense looks like, and if it is at all different from what we think it's going to be. Because I'm just assuming I'm going to see the same Derrick Henry-driven offense in 2023 that I have basically every year that Derrick's been the primary option in the backfield. And really, I mean, they haven't changed. Even though the coaching staff has changed, Mike Mularkey to Mike Vrabel, they really haven't deviated from that as a kind of approach, whether it was DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, or whomever, Deontay Foreman when Derrick Henry wasn't available. Like, it's still basically the same conceptually. How much faster they play only matters if they're able to be efficient, if they're able to be effective, if they're able to stay out of the amount of third downs that they're playing because they're better on early downs. So while I do understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, how well they're able to execute and how well they're able to capitalize on that change of tendency, I think that matters vastly more than have you simplified your play calling language. Because these guys should be able to operate at a certain degree, a certain level, right? We talk about, basically the show collectively having a third grade reading level around here. Well, the Titans as a football team, everybody should be able to have like a collective, let's call it sophomore year reading level as far as play calling language and understanding of it, processing of it is concerned. So there's always going to be that to an extent. There's plenty of instances where you don't have to be the most intelligent or book smart person in the world to be able to understand a play call and understand your assignment on any given play. But the idea of playing faster, the idea of allowing them to think less, that's a good place to start, and it's a fundamental place for the Titans.
Burke's referencing the Kendall Briles offense that he played under at Arkansas is what really made me perk up.
Did we ever use that clip? I don't think we did. In fact, we have it handy. Look at Lucas being an expert producer. Go ahead.
It really reminds me of my sophomore year in college with that being Briles coming in and just having that tempo offense and just knowing like that it's so much things in this offense that we have now that you can just go be free, have fun, and just win games.
Now, for context, why did it hit you the way that it hit you?
Because all of those characteristics, Briles' offense, be free, quick, one-word terminology, play fast, reminds me of a certain offense that's played in the state of Tennessee that isn't the Titans.
Yeah.
I mean, the Heupel offense is born out of the Art Briles Baylor offense. And Kendall Briles obviously adopted a lot of those things. He used it under Lane Kiffin as the offensive coordinator at FAU. He used it under Sam Pittman at Arkansas.
Okay, so
not saying the Titans are going to come out with those wide splits and doing
the amount of eyes in vehicles that just widened when you said another team that plays offense in the state of Tennessee that's not the Titans.
Right. Not saying they're going to have like 13-minute time of possession from time to time. But that's, I will say I would have never thought that is the offense that I would hear. Hey, it reminds me of this. that is not the one I would have picked.
Now, and he's
or
going
that
off,
I would have expected someone to pick.
Right. He's going off what he knows, and what he knows most recently is that Kendall Brawl's offense. So if they're here's why I like that. If you are finding things from their college systems, from their college playbooks, from their college offenses that can maximize the ability of the players further, I like that. I like that Treylon Burks feels some degree of, oh, this is familiar to me. I like this. I know that I can do this well. Please run more of this for me. Is that not one of the biggest criticisms of the Todd Downing run Titans offense, is that they weren't finding ways to maximize the players that they had on the field? Understanding, again, that the players that they had on the field last year and really in 2021 were pretty deficient on any given week. Rash of injuries, availability, all these different things. So what Tim Kelly, if we're to try and piece all these things together to try and get a better picture, not the most clear picture or the picture itself, but as clear a picture as humanly possible, what I'm hearing is, all right, tempo is what they're looking for. Offensive sustainability of drives is the thing that they most lacked. They're thinking that they can bog that down a little less by simplifying their play calling language. And the players, every time they talk about this thing, are saying, yes, there is an emphasis on speed. There is an emphasis on playing faster. But also, these are things that I'm familiar with. These are things that I like. These are things that I remember from college, or this is how it relates to my experience in college, and it's coming off very similar. You might as well got up there and say it's giving Kendall Bryles of the offense. And everybody would have looked around and been like, oh, that's great. It doesn't mean that is the Titans aren't going to run the air raid, okay?
Right, but that offense isn't the air raid, right? Like the run game is just as important to that offense. Arkansas, Tennessee. The Art Briles Baylor offense. The run game, Lane Kiffin running it at Ole Miss. The run game is just as important to that offense as any other aspect.
But it's about what the passing game creates for your rushing lanes. I think while it is a run-based variant of that Art Briles offense, you are understanding that the rushing lane opportunities that are being created are by nature of the explosive passing plays that they have, of the fact that you're going to have to spread teams out, on the spacing of the wide receivers, on how you stack them, and all these different things that allows for less players in the box, which would be great here, by the way. That would be swell when you're just running the 250-pound running back into a wall of 9 players over and over and over again, then punting. That'd be swell. So I think on the whole, that's kind of that's the, I don't want to say it's the biggest headline to come out of all this in the last couple of weeks, but it's one of the ones, the developing undercurrent of what you're looking for and how this thing is supposed to build, or at least how they're projecting for it to build. And that I think you can at least take some solace in if you're somebody who's been constantly bitching about the state of this offense. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. If you got them, we'll update the polls and send you on your way. Coming up next. Now, wait, this isn't Chopped and Screwed.
This is the instrumental.
Is it?
From T-Pain.
Okay. Now, Ron Slay, the only true friend I have in this building, it would appear, has provided some important context. He says, because Lucas didn't know that Chopped and Screwed was a T-Pain joint, he says Chopped and Screwed comes from Houston, originated by DJ Screw. Lean is the song, not the drink. Lean is big in Texas. They slow the music down, they chop it up, and it is played very slow. This is Chopped and Screwed. See, I'm your friend. That's a text that I just got from Ron Slay. Thank you, Ronald. Good work by you.
Is he trying to get back on your good side?
Well, I think that he's doing just enough to make me think that I should allow him back on my good side.
But you should allow him back.
Yeah. Listen, this is like quarterback competition. You got to earn it. And even then, I might not like you. But the way that the two of them immediately went into that room with you and Robert yesterday.
This room's more fun, and that's undeniable when Robert's in here.
That room is more fun?
Yes, absolutely. The party's in this room.
Well, and also
when Robert's here.
There is soundproof equipment and glass, significant panes of glass to shield them from the radiation that was coming off of me when I walked in here after being jump scared for a third straight day. I avoided it today. That doesn't mean that he's not hiding out there in the parking lot under my car or something like that, waiting to grab me by the ankle again.
Oh, he's committed to the cause. He will lie on that parking lot ground for he's been gone for an hour now.
It's an hour-long cigarette break in the middle of his work day.
I wouldn't put it past him.
It's entirely possible.
Hope he's not smoking a cigarette under your car.
Well, that yes, I think that would be unfortunate. But quickly though, before we wrap it up with some polls, and of course Blaine and Mickey 3HL coming up after us, so you can stick right there and continue to listen to the best sports talk all day long.
Brad Hopkins in for Blaine today.
Oh, fun. I don't know Brad. I don't know that I've ever actually met Brad, but I've heard a bunch of good things about him, and I know that he is, of course, one of the Titans greats that's very well respected around here. So I'm sure that will be enjoyable to listen to. Quickly, Celtics avoid the sweep last night from the Miami Heat. The Denver Nuggets have already advanced, and we didn't really talk about LeBron James not really threatening retirement, but pondering retirement at this stage of his career. Were you surprised to see the Celtics show any fight last night? Because, be honest, I really was.
Yeah, I was.
I was shocked the way that they were dragging themselves around. Jimmy Butler in Game 3 was the fourth leading scorer on the Heat, and the Heat still won by 26 against the Celtics in Game 3. A team that, again, I don't accuse professional athletes of not displaying effort because I think their jobs are really, really hard and mostly revolve around effort. And it takes effort just to be out there and available this late in the season by any case. But it did feel like the Celtics in Game 3 had given up, and then all of a sudden, they're able to at least show some kind of a pulse, show some kind of life, and avoid getting swept in Game 4 last night. Now they will have to try and find a way to continue to dig themselves out of the series. Because remember, going into Game 3, the Celtics were still favored. And I couldn't understand it. That's free money they're offering you if you were betting the Heat throughout the course of that series thus far.
Would a Celtics win in Game 5 make you kind of perk up a little bit and think, okay, this might get interesting?
I mean, yeah, because I believe them to be the more talented team. I can't believe Jaylen Brown was 0 for 7 the other night. It's 0 for 7 from 3. And when Tatum is not having a good night, like the Celtics are that flimsy, which was surprising to me. Like without I'm blanking on his last name, their big man, Robert something. For Boston. He's missed a fair amount of time, and he's very important for what they want to do. His durability in the last two playoff runs that they've had, Boston, has been suspect, and it legitimately impacts what they're able to do on the court. But I think that it is fairly flimsy in Boston with the amount of talent that I think most people think they have, and when Grant Williams is the only one on that roster still showing fight and trying to chest up to Jimmy Butler in a little way, and the most response he gets from his teammates is not backup, against Jimmy Butler. It's Malcolm Brogdon in the background looking at him side-on like, I wouldn't mess with Jimmy Butler that way. That's when I thought the Celtics were dead. So, at least it's going to make this watchable in a way that the two conference finals really weren't or haven't been for the most part. Polls, please.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Rising Show correspondent, Lucas Pan. Make that poll Zika.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Thomas says the Arizona Coyotes Twitter account, just bizarre stuff from a franchise that might be moving soon. Yeah, the Coyotes, I don't know what's going on there. They're just posting weird, random things.
Well, and one of their social media managers also got in a bit of hot water because Patrick Mahomes was tweeting that the Coyotes should just move to Kansas City. And one of the social media managers responded, and I'm paraphrasing here, basically you should focus on keeping your little brother out of jail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No.
From the Coyotes Twitter account?
No, I believe it was from
a personal.
Her personal account, but it was somebody directly tied to the Coyotes organization. So apparently they're going through it over there.
Arizona Coyotes, one of the biggest dumpster fires in American professional sports.
Not long for Arizona, it would seem.
Dylan says the Tennessee baseball team, going from one of the best college baseball teams ever last year to whatever this season was. Season's not over.
It's not over.
But one and done in the SEC tournament. Cousin Andrew says, I would say the people in your DMs complaining about Robert are the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Yeah, I tweeted it. We didn't talk about it on the radio show, but a person who thinks themselves to be the arbiter of all things media and what is good content in this world, thinks that they are in a position to tell us how to run this radio show and to tell me who I should be putting on this radio and who I shouldn't. And to that person, I would say, sit on it and spin.
What was your biggest takeaway from Titans OTAs yesterday? Ken says Burks and Chig seem ready to lead this team in receiving.
I wasn't paying attention because I was still getting a little upset by the person who DM'd me.
Okay. What is the biggest improvement Malik Willis needs to make this offseason? I'm keeping it moving here. Okay. Big Joe says updating his LinkedIn profile. Brutal from Big Joe.
That's very mean by
Ed says seeing and reacting on time. Paul says decision-making. Daniel says yes.
Yes is the answer. Yes is the correct answer.
Whose absence from OTAs is a bigger deal? Christian Fulton or Kevin Byard? 52% give it to Fulton.
Yeah, I would say for sure Fulton. Like I said, it's voluntary. I would have liked to have seen him there. I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed that I didn't see him there, but I understand that he's training on his own in South Florida with a trainer that is specifically focused on improving his durability, and that's the biggest issue with Christian Fulton right now.
Those are the polls. Have fun with Robert in the parking lot.
Excellent. That's the show. I will try to avoid having Bert light his cigarette under my car while I'm trying to leave the office today, and hopefully avoid another jump scare. If you want more Bert and me, we will both be on primetime tonight on the A to Z Sports streaming network. If not, we will be joined by Arden Key, Titans edge rusher, tomorrow on the radio show. So make sure you're listening to that at 11:15. Have a great rest of your afternoon and enjoy Mickey and Brad Hopkins coming up next.